lesson on the evolutionary theory, or Bowlby's monotropic theory of attachment. And this is really about evaluation and just showing you how to access and where the resources are. So if you have your attachment booklet, which I will be giving out in class tomorrow, if you can turn to page 24, we've got the evaluation of the evolutionary theory, and there are a few points there for you to have a look at that you might want to use. They're not necessarily the ones that I've talked about in the video, but there are other things that you can use, because I know that everybody works in a slightly different way. So one way of evaluating the evolutionary theory is to go and use the research that is available. So the first piece of research you could look at is research by Tronick. So the research by Tronick supports the existence of monotropy. So you could say one strength of the evolutionary theory is that there is research support for elements of it. For example, Tronick found this, and so on. So if we just have a quick look at the research by Tronick, studied a pygmy tribe from Zaire who lived in extended family groups. The infants and children were looked after and breastfed by different women within the tribe. By 6 months, the infants still showed a preference for their mothers. This clearly suggests evidence of one special relationship, and therefore shows evidence of monotropy, and therefore supports Bowlby's theory. And that's what you need to do with this, so keep linking it back. So we've got some evidence there for monotropy. We've now got some research by Rutter, and we will talk about this more when we start to look at the Romanian orphans, but there is other research into multiple attachments, and this does actually suggest that there isn't always a need for a special relationship with one person. So what you could do here is, on the end of your peel point about monotropy, you could put, however, there is refuting or research that goes against this by Rutter, and so on. The support for the internal working model, Hazen and Shaver's love quiz, we're going to be looking at for a full lesson when we look at early attachment styles and later romantic relationships. And basically what happened with this research was that people were given a love quiz to find out about what happened in their early life and how their current romantic relationships were and what they were like. And they basically found that the attachment types that were found early on mirrored in later life. So therefore what that suggests is that there is an internal working model that we take forwards into later life, and therefore support the idea of that part of the theory. So if we move on onto the next page, there's a little bit there about the temperament hypothesis. It's a bit of extension. You don't necessarily need that. There are some exam questions at the end here if you want to have a go at them. If we can just go to question 3, briefly outline one research study that supports Bowlby's theory. It's unlikely that you're going to get a question like that. It's more likely that you're going to get a question asking you to evaluate Bowlby's theory. But if you do, there is quite a lot of research. So we've got Tronick, obviously we've got Hazen and Schaefer, and we've also got some research that we're going to bring out sort of through the Romanian orphans by Rutter. So there will be a lot of research that you can discuss there. Okay, so just to pick up on something else, you should already have access to this sheet, but if you go to the sheet that's entitled Evaluation Sheet, Both Theories, you can see here that we've got the basics of the theory on the side here, and then the evaluation of the theory here. If you're able to fill that in and do some kind of evaluation. Now remember, when you're evaluating, you don't have to just evaluate through research. You can also evaluate through some of the issues and debates in psychology. So for example, Bowlby's theory takes the nature side of the nature-nurture debate, and this is obviously a strength, explain why, but then you could say it arguably fails to consider the importance of nurture. So we could talk about that as well. It's also a very deterministic theory, so the idea being that you have an innate kind of blueprint. Think about again some of the problems with how this is studied and so on. So you should have filled in both of those there, and you should therefore have a sheet now that is evaluating both of them. You won't be asked to compare and contrast, but what you can do is, for example, you can say that a weakness of Bowlby's theory is that it fails to consider the learning theory of attachment and vice versa. So they really are quite opposing theories, those. The other thing that I've got that I used to use, and if anybody would like to use this as a bit of stretch and challenge, this is a mini booklet just based on Bowlby. And I tend to use this for anyone who's perhaps struggling with the theory or wants a little bit more detail. So if you want to use this, and I'll make sure that it's uploaded. And again, you've got this little activity that you can fill in. We've got the ASCMI from the video. You can fill in what it means and what the explanation is. We've got some of the key terms there, and one of the things here that's quite useful is that you can look at some of the strengths of the theory. So, for example, one strength is it clearly shows the importance of monotropy, and you can bring in some research there to support that. Caregiver sensitivity, again, it clearly shows the importance of that. But what I'm thinking here is that perhaps these are probably the better ones to use. So universality is this idea of an innate need to attach is found in nearly every species, and that's where, if you like, you can pull over and bring imprinting in. So there are strengths of Bowlby's theory, and similarly we've got weaknesses, and this will probably be a bit easier for you to fill in. But one of the problems is the fact that Bowlby doesn't consider how early children, infants, can develop multiple attachments. And there you can talk about Schaefer and Emerson's theory and how multiple attachments can actually be achieved much earlier than Bowlby suggests. But also you can talk about research where children are brought up in different cultures, where they're brought up with several mums, which, for example, the research by Tronick, where that kind of goes against the idea of a monotropous relationship and suggests, if you like, that you could have several attachments. So it depends how you use the research. The best way of evaluating Bowlby's theory in terms of weaknesses is to talk about alternative explanations. So the importance of learning theory and the idea that through kind of repetition and reinforcement and association, children, infants will learn to attach, and this doesn't account for that because this implies that it is a complete biological inbuilt phenomena, if you like. There's a little bit at the end there where you can fill in the definitions just to ensure that you know them. So if there's anything here that you're not sure about, if you need anything else on evaluation, if you would like to go back and write up some peel points for Bowlby's theory, when I see you in class this week, I'll make sure that I go through those. Okay, thank you.